Hey guys, welcome back. Today on The Untidy Artist, I am showing you how I shape my sourdough bread. So this is part 3 in my sourdough bread series. I also have videos on the starter, the sourdough starter, how to make the bread. This is how to shape the bread, and then there's also a tutorial on how to bake the bread. Links for all of the sourdough tutorials are below in the description. Okay, first step. Grab some flour and lightly sprinkle it over your work surface. And I like to do this in my kitchen. And then you're going to gently coax your dough out of the bowl. So this is my dough that's been raising and proofing all day long, and it's ready to shape. So I'm just gently coaxing my dough onto my work surface, being really careful not to tear or pull on the dough. We want it to stay nice and aerated. Now I'm going to grab my bench scraper, and I have had this scraper for more than 20 years, and I'm going to split my dough in half. It doesn't have to be perfect. I just kind of eyeball it. And you can flour the bench scraper if you want to, sprinkle a little bit of flour on it, but I find if I work quickly on this part that it doesn't really stick. And then I'm going to take a little bit more flour, sprinkle a little bit more down, and we're going to pre-shape our dough right now. So I'm going to take 1/2 of the dough, and we're going to pull it in on all 4 corners. So from the top, we're pulling it towards the center, and I'm going to do it from the bottom. And if your dough is super sticky, you can use your bench scraper. I usually just use my hands, or depending on how sticky the dough is, and you're just coaxing it into a shape. So I've got the first 2 folded. Now I'm going to do the sides. And you notice I'm not using tons and tons of flour on this dough. Okay, so once I have all 4 corners folded in, I'm now going to fold in the other 4 corners. And I'm kind of just pinching it together in the center, and then I'm gently going to flip it over so the seam side is down on my counter. I have links to 3 different videos for sourdough bread making that I found super helpful. And in one of them, she says you're just suggesting to the dough what shape you want it to be. So that's why we're pre-shaping it. So just pulling it in on all 4 corners, pinching it in the center, flipping it over so the seam side is down. And we're just gonna let this rest for about 20 to 30 minutes. And I usually put a tea towel over it so it doesn't dry it out at all. What you want is for the dough to be visibly rested a little bit. And while it's resting, I actually get my proofing bowls ready. So you can actually buy proofing bowls that you can actually bake in. I just use a bowl that I have. I put a clean tea towel in it, sprinkle a light layer of flour on it, and that's what we'll be using to proof our dough. So I prepared 2 different bowls with the tea towels, and now we're gonna shape our first loaf. So this has been resting for about 30 minutes. Now what I'm going to do is, I flipped it over so the seam side is up. I'm going to pull the top down and then kind of go back and forth like you're wrapping a mummy. And then you're going to fold the bottom up. So there's my first fold. Now in on each side, back and forth, kind of holding it as I go. And then I'm going to take the bottom part, gently pull it up, and I'm going to gently roll the dough. Now I'm going to get my bench scraper, and I want to tighten the seam up on the bottom of the dough. So I'm going to grab the bench scraper, and I'm going to press it underneath to kind of tighten that dough. And then I also do it from all 4 corners. Now I'm going to use my hands, and what you're going to do is you're going to draw the loaf of bread towards you and then away from you. And what we're doing is tightening the dough. We want it to be tight on the top. So I'm pushing it away and then pulling it towards me. And I place my fingertips kind of at the base of the dough, and you can feel it and see the dough start to tighten. This does take some practice. I was so confused about this in the beginning of making sourdough bread. I probably watched at least 15 different videos. I slowed them down, I tried different methods, and this is what works best. So you just keep doing that until it's nice and tight and a round shape. You can see those bubbles and see it's nice and tight. Then I'm going to flip it into my bowl, seam side up, and you can see how nice and tight it is at the bottom there. I'm going to place it in, give it a light sprinkle of flour, and then I'm going to gently fold the tea towel over the bread. You don't want to smash it down onto the bread because it will leave marks in your bread. So I'm just lightly folding it around the bread. My kids make fun of me because they say I'm tucking my bread in, and they're not wrong. My bread gets a lot of tender, loving care. Okay, now I'm going to set that aside and I'm going to shape my second loaf. So flipping it so the seam side is up, I kind of throw it down onto the counter gently a couple times to let it flatten out, and then I'm folding the top down, wrapping it like a mummy, grabbing the bottom, and rolling it gently. You don't want to press any of the air out of it, and then using the bench scraper, I'm going to tighten it up on the bottom from all sides. And then I'm going to use my hands and start tightening the dough. And this, honestly, guys, just takes practice. So you push it away and gently pull it forward, and you can see how that top of the dough is starting to tighten up, which is what we want. And I just keep doing this until I have a round shape and the dough feels nice and tight. Now I'm going to place it into my other bowl. See how beautiful that dough is. I'm going to tuck the tea towel around it. And then it's actually going to proof in our fridge for anywhere from 18 to 24 hours. Another thing I learned is that the longer the bread sits in the fridge, the more digestible it becomes. And so before I set it in the fridge though, I am going to grab some plastic wrap and loosely put it over the bread. Once again, we don't want to smash that tea towel into the bread because it will leave indentations. So I'm just lightly putting some saran wrap over that, and I'm going to put it in my fridge. This, if you just put saran wrap, the condensation will get on your bread, and I found that if I just use the tea towel, the bread dries out. So you want the tea towel and the loosely covered plastic wrap over your bread, and then set it in your fridge for 18 to 24 hours. Now, a little bit more about the bowls I use. You want to make sure whatever bowl you use to proof your bread, that it has nice high sides. So at first I was using a bigger bowl and my dough would kind of flatten out into the bowl. You want something that's going to shape your dough and give it the nice round shape so that when you bake it, it's going to raise up instead of raising out. I will put links to where I got these bowls below. There are tons that Amazon sells that are made specifically for bread making, for sourdough bread making. This worked well for me, and a colander also works really well to hold your dough. So that's it, you guys. That's how we shape our dough. In the next tutorial in this series, I'll go over how to bake your bread and how to score the top of the dough and give it some decorative designs. I will put links for all of the videos in this series below in the description of the video, as well as some other helpful information. Thanks you guys so much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video.